Welcome back to Co-op Radio 102.7 FM CFRO. This is Monday Brown Bagger. We have as a guest Michael Rivero. And Michael, the first thing I wanted to talk about coming back, I've always been someone that feels that the government is trying to feed us a load of crap with this fairy tale of 9/11, and someone living off in a cave, in the middle of nowhere, being totally isolated, and as a known CIA agent being behind this stuff. To me, I feel like this is a B-rate movie that even a B-rate filmmaker wouldn't even want to put out. We know about Cheney being involved with running NORAD. We also know about Operation Norwood. We know about the fact that the firefighters heard bombs going off in the towers. We know about Building 7 being ordered to be pulled on September 11th. And, living in Las Vegas, it would take, the places that they'd implode there, it would take at least, 2 weeks for them to put all the explosives in it. So it's sort of like they were preparing for it. What else have you heard about this horrendous event of September 11th?
Well, I think the important thing to realize, and you're right, it is a terrible script. I don't think anybody would want to touch it to try and make it into a real movie, other than to repeat the government's propaganda. But there's an old saying that truth is stranger than fiction because fiction has to make sense. And there's a lot about 9/11 that never really did make sense. For me, the two top issues here are the fact that President George W. Bush, even after being told by White House aide Andrew Card that the second building had been struck in New York, and by Bush's own admission after the fact, this is the moment he realized the United States was under some kind of terrorist attack, and yet he goes on sitting in that schoolroom reading about goats with the kids there. And, of course, Bush's defenders and the defenders of the 9/11 orthodoxy are going on, well, he didn't want to upset the children or anything like that. That's not his job. He could have stood up and said, I'm the president, and sometimes the president has to go do things, and I'm sorry, and just walk out of the room, and he wouldn't have upset anybody that way. But really, beyond that, here's the question. You've got all these Secret Service agents who are around him. Outside, he's got this hopefully bomb-proof limousine that he drives around in. And nobody from the Secret Service moved to grab the president and put him in that bomb-proof limousine and get him out of there. And they should have. And the reason is, and go back and look at the videotapes of Hinckley's attempt to assassinate Ronald Reagan and see how fast those Secret Service agents can move when they think there's a danger. So here you have, Bush is down there at the school. He's reading about My Pet Goat. They know there's a terrorist attack underway. There is a supposedly unknown number of airplanes flying across the countryside, crashing into buildings, and they don't know how many there are because by an amazing coincidence not to be believed, there is a NORAD drill simulating some 30 hijacked planes in the air, crashing into buildings at the exact same moment. So nobody knows what's real and what isn't. Now, Bush's presence at that school at that time was in the media 3 days ahead of time, and there's a runway, an airport, only 4 miles away from the school. So with all of that stuff around there, you'd think the Secret Service would say, okay, let's get the boss in the car and drive in a random direction to foil a potential inbound airplane. And yet they don't move, they don't touch him. The Secret Service, by their inaction, are advertising to the world that they knew President Bush was not a target that day. And the only way they could know that was that they knew what the targets were going to be that day. Now, the other really damning piece of information, if you will, of course, is the videotape from the corporate media, the BBC especially, in which it is announced that Building 7 has collapsed, even though it is, in fact, still standing directly behind the newscaster. This tells us all. They're working from a pre-planned script, what was supposed to happen when, and for some reason, Building 7 was not brought down on time. And nobody got the word to the media to say, hold off on that aspect of the story because we've had some technical glitches here. And, of course, there's the way Building 7 itself just came straight down into its own footprint. That does not happen in any other context but a controlled demolition.
And also, we have to remember recently that the CIA has been caught lying to the Congress since September 11th, and the fact that it was proven that Channing actually had a death squad of people all over the world, taking out assassination people all over the world. Could you fill our listening audience in a little bit more on that stuff?
Well, the idea that the U.S. assassinates people is a bit of a shock to most Americans, just as the news that that our government has been torturing people to obtain politically useful confessions. It's not what we think America is supposed to be. But the further we dig into it, the more we realize this kind of stuff's been going on all the time. It's just we were not allowed to know about it, to know what the government was doing with our money and in our name. As far as the assassination squad, everybody's pointing fingers and they're trying to say it was canceled, and it was only the bad guys. And we've been hearing them say, well, it was only targeted on Al-Qaeda. It reminds me a lot of the movie True Lies, where Jamie Lee Curtis is playing the wife of this spy played by Schwarzenegger, and she's just found out he's been a spy all these years, and she says, did you kill anybody? And he says, well, yeah, but they were all bad, as if that made it okay. And we're getting that kind of a song and dance from the U.S. government. But the bottom line is we have got so many strange, inexplicable deaths. We've got Deborah Jean Palfrey, the so-called D.C. madam, who, in theory, we were told had the goods on Dick Cheney's private personal nightlife. We have Paul Wellstone. We have a lot of people. We have a whole rash of microbiologists were being killed off early off in the Bush administration. Nobody knows why that was being done. We have John F. Kennedy, Jr., who died just in time to open the way for Hillary Clinton to sit at that New York Senate seat. There's all these deaths going on, and of course most Americans now understand there was a conspiracy to kill President John F. Kennedy. There was a conspiracy to kill Robert Kennedy. It just goes on and on and on. This happens all the time. Kings get killed. Politics is power.
I remember reading an article last night where it talked about John F. Kennedy Jr. and the fact that if he would have survived, that he's probably the only candidate in the United States that could have ran under a third-party ticket and he could have won. He could have got. They calculated out about 35% of the vote if he would have ran when Gore and Bush ran at the same time, and it would have done. Would have gone over to your system right there. Once a vote is basically broken up, you don't have enough electoral seats, and it goes over to this College of Electoral. What's the name of that again, Michael? It slips my mind.
The Electoral College.
So then it basically exposed the weakness of them, because it said in the article that it would have had Bush having the least amount of votes, but they would have elected him anyway. But then it would have shown the American people, it finally would have shown the whole entire thing, what's really going on to the American people back in 2000, and probably woken up half of the United States.
Well, I think most Americans got a serious wake-up in 2000 anyway. They began to realize just how compromised our election system is. And most Americans were unaware prior to 2000 that a private company owned by the media counts our national elections. There is no National Elections Office of Counting. There is no civilian oversight. It is a privately owned company owned by the TV networks and a couple of key newspapers. They count the national elections. They've been caught making mistakes. They've been caught lying. But it never gets out there because the media owns the company and they never report on all these things that are coming forward. So the reality is, and I keep telling everybody, we go into an election, and we've got to fix our election system if we're going to do anything to change this country peacefully. We've got to have honest elections. Because today's the 40th anniversary of the day that man walked on the moon. And you're telling me that the same nation that accomplished that technological wonder is unable to come up with an honest, fair, and accurate election system? I don't believe it. If our election system is easy to cheat and compromise, it is because it's designed that way.